how to end domestic violence. Hi, I'm Nachi Sinha, and today we're going to talk about how to end domestic violence. In my previous videos, I explained domestic violence and the signs that indicate that a relationship is going towards domestic violence. I also talked about some of the signs that show that a person is a victim of domestic violence. In today's video, I will talk about ending domestic violence. Because surviving in a violent and abusive relationship is of no use. It will affect you physically and mentally, and in severe cases, it will be a threat to your life. So suppose you are a victim of domestic violence or know someone suffering from it. If that's the case, you should take prompt action. Here are a few simple yet effective ways to end domestic violence. Identify the signs and behaviours. The first step to ending domestic violence is to prevent it from happening. And for that, you need to identify the red flags and abusive behaviours of your partner in the relationship. For example, if your partner yells at you or belittles you, understand that this is a sign of abuse. And if one is not stopped, it will continue, and the abuse will continue emotionally and might turn to violence. They won't refrain from hitting or pushing you. And in the beginning, the abusive partner will try to delude you into thinking that they care about you or they're trying to help you. Victims often fall for this trap and get abused by the abusers. But remember, loving someone and abusing them are two entirely different things. So instead of that, put an end to the abusive relationship. If you spot some abusive signs in someone's relationship, talk to them and make them aware of the signs. Because domestic violence stems from emotional abuse. And if it is not identified and stopped, it will lead to violence, which in many cases can be life-threatening. Moving on to the next step. Understand that it isn't your fault. The victim often blames himself for abuse and violence. He's made to believe that it must have been them who did something wrong that resulted in abuse. For example, the abuser often uses statements like, "You made me angry." "Well, why didn't you do it right?" "I told you to do what I told you to." This is all your fault. Domestic violence is never the victim's fault. It is always the abuser's fault. So never blame yourself for the abuser's violent behavior or their tendency to physically harm you. Because the more you blame yourself or think you are responsible for triggering the abuser, the more your abuser will use it against you. They will make you feel guilty for not doing what they ask of you and will control you as they wish. So, I stress, do not blame yourself. And if you have a friend, family member or neighbor suffering from domestic violence, teach them not to blame themselves. In most cases, people are reluctant to accept that their partners are abusive. They will try to defend their partners and take the burden of the wrongdoing on themselves. So be patient with such victims and tell them that they shouldn't blame themselves for the violence that they are subjected to. The third step for ending domestic violence is establishing boundaries. If your spouse or partner hurts you physically or sexually, you must put your step down and walk away. It can, of course, be terrifying to talk about it, but it is important. You must tell the abuser that you will not accept violence and abuse. Show them that you're not afraid to speak your mind. Now, most of the time, the victims are so scared of their abuser that they will continue to suffer at the hands of the abuser without asking them to stop. Your silence gives more power to the abuser. The abuser thinks that you're weak and will never retaliate, and hence they continue their violence. But if you stand up against them and speak to them, it will show them that you are not weak. Warn your abusers that you won't succumb to violence and they need to stop. You also need to communicate your boundaries to them. For instance, if a husband beats his wife, the wife can warn him that the next time he tries to hurt her, she will contact the local police or inform his boss or colleagues or friends. Establishing and communicating boundaries will alert your abuser. And next time, if he thinks of hurting you, they will get cold feet thinking about your warning. Moving on to the fourth step. Give up fixing your abuser. Most people believe that love, care, and support will change their partners. They believe that by being there for them and staying patient, the day will come when the partners will let go of their abusive behavior and violence. If you also believe that you can change your partner's attitude and stop them from resorting to violence, then you're mistaken. Because whenever your abuser abuses you and you say nothing, you give them more confidence to be more violent the next time. Hence, give up the idea of changing your partner, because they won't change, and the only way they will change is by seeking professional help or by being reprimanded by legal authorities. I'm not saying that you shouldn't help your partner or extend your support to them, but not at your cost. Supporting them for their abusive behavior and violence is risking your own health and, in severe cases, your life. So never entertain the idea of giving a chance to your abuser in the hope that they will change. Moving on to the fifth step of ending domestic violence. Seek help. It's important and helpful to do what you can to end domestic violence once and for all. Many victims are afraid to speak up and ask for help because they're afraid of what their abusers will do to them. Plus, victims often feel that they won't be trusted and helped to get out of the relationship. If you also have these thoughts in your mind, don't pay attention to them. Instead, share your problem with a trusted friend or family member or a professional. Tell them about the violence you suffered and how the abuser treats you at home. By asking for help, you stand a better chance of getting out of domestic violence without becoming too late. Now, apart from sharing the problem of domestic violence, also discuss your financial matters with your friends. If you are independent and have a place to live, you would not have much trouble leaving your partner. But if you are dependent upon your partner and have children, it becomes more important to ask for help. There are many organizations that support domestic violence victims. They even help victims find a job or a place to stay on their own or with their kids. Ask your friends or family members to connect you with such organizations so that you can leave the abuser without fearing survival or financial difficulties. But all this will only happen when you speak up and tell people that you need help. If you choose silence and suffering over speaking up, you will not make it out of domestic abuse. and will continue to be subjected to violence. But once you choose to end the relationship, don't be afraid to contact legal authorities. This brings us to our second step. Don't be afraid to contact the local police. Usually when the victim exits an abusive relationship, they don't think about pressing charges. They think that they're free from domestic violence and there is no need to complicate matters. But that isn't the right approach. If the abuser is not exposed and held accountable for their doings, they will never stop the violence. And there is a huge probability that they will abuse their next partner, spouse, or kids. And so if your partner physically hurts you or threatens to hurt you, call the local police immediately. Share the details with them and do not hide or make excuses. And if you have records and pieces of evidence, share that too. Leaving an abusive relationship isn't enough. It does save you and sets you free from the constant fear of the abuser. But the unpunished abuser is like, a wild animal roaming free. They will find another victim and continue with their violent and abusive behavior. You must muster the courage and press legal charges. This action can save someone from becoming the victim of that abuser. Imagine if every victim spoke up and reported domestic violence to the authorities. The other abusers would have become cautious and have refrained from hurting or abusing others. The last step to ending domestic violence is to move on and focus on healing yourself. And the best way to overcome the trauma of violence is to take help from a professional. I have said before that staying in a relationship which is violent risks your physical and mental health and destroys the chance of living your life to the fullest. So if you are suffering from domestic violence, you must make every attempt to escape it as soon as you can. Do not give a chance to your abuser to become more violent or abusive towards you. In my next video, I will talk about how one can play a part in helping other domestic abuse victims. Don't forget to subscribe. Reach out and ask for help. Help is available. Thank you.